I'm Miranda Cosgrove, and this is Mission Unstoppable. Coming up, big falls head over heels for the science of skateboarding. Then, chemistry has never looked this good.
I like to call this shade Pigment of Your Imagination.
And get your hot glue ready. We've got crafts to code.
I'm so happy with the way this is working.
Plus, we're out in the wild tracking snakes.
We have a night snake here, everybody. These guys are very rare.
Get ready to meet the scientists, inventors, and heroes who help make our world a better place. The future is here. The mission unstoppable. Ever wonder what science is up to when you're not paying attention? Lucky for you, our first story will tell you just that. Check it out.
Biotechnology takes the power of biological systems and cells to create cutting-edge innovations. It's changing how we stay healthy, how we grow food, and even how we handle climate change. Some places are working on biotechnology so advanced, their legal department wouldn't sign off on us doing a segment. So instead, we decided to talk to a biotechnology project manager about skateboarding? When she's not staring down the barrel of a microscope, Judy Jang Jan is barreling down a half-pipe, using her science skills to become a better skateboarder.
I always loved skateboarding. It always looked so fun to me. And there was so much science involved, and the way to learn about skateboarding was really similar to science. The more you learn, the more there is to learn, and it's never ending.
Today, I'm going to the skate park so Judy can show me the physics fundamentals behind her favorite hobby.
So you're a scientist, not just a skateboarder. So how did you combine these two things?
Understanding the incline and how the angles work. There's certainly geometry and physics. And understanding both of them and how they apply helps me understand what to do, how my board's gonna go, and learn a new trick.
So are you gonna be able to teach me some tricks today?
For sure, everyone can learn how to skate.
Nice.
Before I start my training, Judy wants to show me some of the geometry that makes a skate park like this work.
What are we looking at?
This is a bank. Skateboarders can roll up on it, do turns and tricks.
So if it's a large angle versus a small angle, what will happen?
It's a large angle and it's steeper. We have to use a lot more speed and approach it with more force. And if it's a lower angle, it's gonna be more mellow and you can take your time and ride up on it slower.
Are there other structures that this applies to as well?
On this side, this is a half pipe. Imagine the radius of a big circle on each end and a flat ground in the middle. Knowing the height that you're gonna start at and understanding how much speed it's gonna give you allows you to time your approach to the other side and back down.
One way skaters use physics to keep their speed up in the half pipe is a technique called pumping, something skate student Sol is learning today with help from expert skater Rob.
So tell me a bit about what they're doing.
They are pumping. That means being able to keep yourself perpetually going back and forth in the half pipe. So imagine if there's a string tied to your body and you're a pendulum swinging. Whenever you decrease the length of that string, you go faster. This principle is conservation of angular momentum. That's what they're doing every time they thrust their bodies upward and then push down onto the ramp. Theoretically, they can go on forever.
Another skateboarding technique Sol is practicing today is called the drop-in.
So tell me a bit about conservation of energy here on the ramp.
Essentially, wherever you get above the ground, that gives you potential energy, and it gives you equal measure of kinetic energy going in. So the higher up we are starting, the faster she'll go.
So all of that potential energy turns into kinetic energy. So if this platform was even higher, there'd be a higher potential energy before dropping in.
Exactly. If you've ever watched those amazing skate competitions where the ramps are super high, they're called vertical ramps, and the sides are nearly vertical. They can get so high, they can launch themselves out of the air and do all kinds of amazing tricks.
Now that I know some of the physics, it should be simple to just put on some gear and master a beginner's move like the pump, right?
All right, woo!
How you doing?
I'm applying the physics!
So like any skill, this takes time and practice. But after a few minutes, I'm starting to get it.
By standing and thrusting up, you are giving yourself speed.
I'm feeling the physics.
Now I'm ready to try something more advanced, like dropping in.
Leaning forward and stepping down. You! That was amazing!
That was so cool. I did it.
Great drop in.
Whew. I knew there was a lot of potential energy involved, but this just takes energy.
It really does.
Today was so awesome, Judy. I got to learn all about the science behind skateboarding. I got to do some drop-ins and some pumping.
You were amazing. You did awesome.
Well, it's time for me to roll on out of here. Can I borrow that skateboard?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Bye, Fig.
Bye.
Sometimes I'm overcome with the need to keep all the science to myself so that only I know how the world works. But then I remember I'm under contract, and legally I have to share the science. Take a look.
When you're buying new makeup, you're usually looking for the right shade, texture, and finish for your specific skin type. But did you know that your makeup can do more? One of my personal favorite things to do is create makeup that also acts as skincare. Hi, I'm Amanda. I'm a professional cosmetic chemist, and I'm here to teach you what goes into some of your favorite beauty products. So today, I'm gonna show you how I make moisturizing cream blush. Cosmetic concoctions with Amanda, yeah! This one is extra special because not only does it add a nice glow and pigment to your face, it also moisturizes your skin. Kind of a chemistry BOGO. Cream blush is obviously different from a powder blush because, duh, the name is different. But also it has a nice dewiness to it. And that dewiness is actually thanks to chemistry. So next time your makeup gives you a nice dewy glow, make sure to thank your favorite cosmetic chemist.
Cosmetic concoctions with Amanda.
First, we're gonna take our ingredients and combine them into two separate phases, phase A and phase B. In chemistry, a phase means a group of ingredients and they're separated by what ingredients need to be processed together. This ensures that our final product is stable and it doesn't separate back into its many components. Phase A consists of our structuring agent and emollients. Phase B consists of our active, antioxidants, and my favorite part, the color additives. Let's start with phase A, adding our first emollient, propylheptyl caprylate, to our beaker. This leaves the skin feeling silky and soft after using it. It's special because it absorbs quickly and it contains lipids. Lipids are essentially fatty substances that can moisturize your epidermal layer. Next, we'll mix in our structuring agent, which is full of polymers and helps to thicken the solution. From there, we'll add C1218 alkynyl glycerin sebacic acid copolymer, which is another emollient. This one is known as a soft solid emollient. This emollient has a melting effect when it reaches skin temperature, which helps the product get into the skin, and as an added benefit, it softens the skin even more. This type of emollient makes the blush sit on the skin without causing cakiness. Then we'll add in jojoba esters, which is a soft wax emollient, adding more skin smoothing benefits. Because it's really solid, it's not gonna mix properly, so we wanna melt it down a little bit till it gets into a liquid, and then we'll start to mix. Now that it's melted, let's put our lab glasses on. Safety first. I'm taking our magnetic stir bar. Now I'm gonna turn on the mixer and I'm going to bring down the temperature so we get to 75 to 80 degrees Celsius. And now we're gonna add each of the phase B ingredients in one by one. Our first phase B ingredient will be our active ingredient, which is a mixture of octododecanol, hydrogenated cocoa glycerides, and sunflower seed extract. This stuff is great for strengthening your skin barrier. Next, let's add in our antioxidants. This is used to prevent rancidity of the product and protect the skin from unstable, cell-damaging atoms known as free radicals. Now the fun part. We can combine our colors to make the blush the shade we want. To do this, I'm using titanium dioxide, a red pigment, and a yellow pigment. The titanium dioxide is a cool one because it's derived from titanium. You might know of titanium for its metal properties, but when it's used in cosmetics, it's a white powder. And that helps us get the shade of color that we're looking for. It's in everything. It's in your toothpaste too. If I added the pigment without the titanium dioxide, this blush would look totally different. Look at how milky white the titanium dioxide has made it. Now it's time to add the pigments. This is gonna give us my favorite shade of blush as we mix it in. That looks awesome, right? Once all of this is done mixing, we're going to pot it up into their individual containers to set. That was such a perfect pour. Now we just need to let it cool and solidify. And now it's time to test it out. It feels nice and smooth and moisturizing on the skin, just like I had planned. I can feel the emollients doing their job, and obviously the colors are popping in a way that we wanted to, adding a nice, healthy glow to our skin. I like to call this shade Pigment of Your Imagination. See you next time for more Cosmetic Concoctions with Amanda. Bye!
Robots already help clean our homes and build our cars. But it's time they did something actually useful. Like, give us cute holiday decorations.
As a true arts and crafts fanatic, holidays are the perfect time to get out the old pattern shears, hot glue guns, and tubs of multicolored glitter to make intricate, robotic decorations that tell the world, I love this holiday almost as much as I love my local craft store. See you soon, Marcia. Hi, I'm Christina. I'm a software engineer by trade, but a crafting enthusiast in my heart. And I want to teach you the magic behind arts and crafts and coding. Let's get building. Today, we're going to make a decorative robot that responds to the world around it by incorporating sensors into our circuit. If you've built circuits before, you're probably familiar with a resistor, which helps limit the flow of electric current so that it doesn't overpower a circuit. But this is a photoresistor, or a light-dependent resistor. This sensor here takes in the amount of light in its environment, which directly correlates to how much resistance the sensor adds into our circuit. We want to build a bat that flaps her wings when the room reaches a certain amount of darkness. But you can make any holiday decoration you want. A running reindeer for Christmas, stars hovering around a moon for Eid, or a woman painstakingly placing trusses on the bridge for World Engineering Day. So now we need to connect our microcontroller and our breadboard. And our microcontroller is a little computer that will be the brains of our robot. To make the bat flap her wings, we'll need 2 servo motors. Servo motors have wires for ground, power, and data. So these power wires will always go in this vertical power strip on our breadboard and connect to the 5-volt pin on our microcontroller. And then our ground wire will do something similar, where it goes in this ground vertical strip and connects to the ground pin on our microcontroller. Now it's time to put the data wires into our servo motors. This data tells the motors exactly when and where to move. Our photoresistor also needs a data connection, but this data will be coming out of the sensor to tell us how bright the room is. In a pitch black room, the photoresistor will have a ton of resistance, so almost 0 voltage will move through the circuit. But in a super bright room, current can move freely, so our sensor reading will be a high number. We'll just need to code a number as our threshold for when the bat should start flapping her wings. Even a coding sorceress wouldn't magically know what number corresponds to a bright room. Instead, we can ask our photoresistor to talk to us about what it sees. In our code, we'll ask the microcontroller to read the value of our light sensor. As I move my hand over the sensor to make it darker or lighter, the values change. Now, it looks like 50 is a pretty dark number, so let's set our threshold around 60. Using code, we'll tell our microcontroller this. If our sensor value is less than that threshold, move the motors to flap the wings. This looks great. I'm really happy with the way this circuit is working. Now it's time to craft. You've seen people glue things. You don't need to watch me do it. So, through the magic of TV, here's our beautiful bat. She's still right now, but let's put our hand over the photoresistor and make it dark for her. And she is so happy to start flapping her wings in the dark. Now, if you don't want your bat to be tethered to your laptop, you can add an external battery to hang her up. Just don't let her fly away. I'll see you next time for more arts and crafts and coding. And you, Batty, you're coming with me to meet Marcia.
Snakes might have a bad reputation, but they're actually an important part of our environment. You really gotta hand it to them. Well, you can't literally hand it to them. They don't have any hands or arms. You get what I'm talking about.
Conservationists know that reptiles can be an important indicator species, which means they give us signs on the health of the environment. So by studying them, we can measure the effects of our conservation efforts. And Samantha Wins not only studies the environment, she leads the charge on teaching the next generation of conservationists.
Science communication is equally as important as doing the science itself. Does it matter if I do science if I don't tell others about it? How will we know to preserve and protect it?
Sam spreads science to visitors at Cabrillo National Monument near San Diego, California. She also mentors teens from the park's conservation and environmental steward apprenticeship program, like Felix.
I've always known that I wanted to be a scientist, but going through that STEM program here with Sam really made me feel like it was something that I could realistically pursue.
Today, scientist Felix will give us a snake talk, but only after collecting data out in the field to help assess the health of the environment.
So Felix, we're gonna do some wildlife monitoring today.
Monitoring helps determine what kinds of wildlife are in the park by temporarily capturing animals in specially designed traps, known as pitfalls.
How does the pitfall work? It's basically a bucket that's buried in the ground, kind of up to its lip. And there's the guide fence. It guides little creatures into the pitfalls.
Like this little lizard here.
This is a western fence lizard. If you have ever heard of bluebellies, that's this type of lizard right here. So we're gonna take some data on him.
Sam and Felix note the type of animal, along with its weight and length.
7.5 grams.
Once the data is collected, the animal is let back into the wild.
Denied, so fast.
But traps aren't the only place to monitor wildlife. These are called cover boards because they provide shelter or cover from the elements. Peeking under these can lead to some incredible sights.
Jackpot. We have a night snake here, everybody. These guys are very rare. It's been years since I've seen one. He looks nice and healthy. I don't see any mites or ticks. Now, Felix, do you see him sticking his tongue out like this? What's he doing with his tongue?
He's using his chemosensory abilities, which is basically him sniffing the air with his tongue.
You're absolutely right. So he's kind of tasting the air, and that sends a signal to his brain about what's going on in his environment.
Once their monitoring is completed,
Here he goes.
it's time for Felix's favorite part of the day, the snake talk.
A lot of the misconceptions about snakes, specifically about venomous snakes, leads to a lot of people actively hurting or endangering these creatures when they play a huge role in our ecosystems and help keep those ecosystems healthy.
Snakes are really important predators. They help keep all the small mammal population low, and also that they're really no threat to humans. If we leave them alone, they leave us alone.
Joining Felix and Sam is Boris, a California king snake.
California king snakes are non-venomous.
Helping the public appreciate snakes is only half the fun. For Sam and Felix, the best part is when they spark people's interest in science.
My advice for anybody who wants to pursue a career in STEM or study animals or learn more about the world around them is to get involved, stay curious, and ask a lot of questions. STEM is for everyone.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
Welcome back. Before we go, we have one last thing.
If you have something that you're really interested in or curious about, give it a try. There's no harm in trying.
We're all wildly capable, so if science sounds hard, don't be deterred. Really pursue it and enjoy it. There's so much to learn and to continue learning. It's a field that's hard, but definitely very rewarding.
That's it for this week's Mission Unstoppable. We tried to book some beavers for next week, but it's a lot of work. They're not as eager as you'd think. Bye! If you're watching this, you must have really liked the video. Make sure you follow and subscribe, and check out these other videos that are even better. No, really. I've seen this one over 100 times.